self-sufficient.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, my son has a job, but he could leave at any time, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission Board meeting for April the 8th to order. If we could, we'll start with a little housekeeping. We'll start with our minutes from January. If every council member will review those and make a motion accordingly.
I'll make a motion to
Okay.
approve.
There's a second.
A second.
Okay. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll move on to the March minutes as well. We'll go ahead and take care of those as well.
I make a motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Wonderful. We'll move on to agenda item agenda item 3. It's considering a zone change from R1, single-family residential, to B1, local business for Lot 15E, City Block 64, parcel ID 26139, located at 3609 Northeast Stallings. Mr. Manty.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have a rezoning case from R1, which is our residential zoning district, to B1, which is it's a commercial zoning district within the city limits as part of this zoning ordinance. And this rezoning is located at 3609 Southeast Stallings Drive, which you can see on the screens. Currently, it houses a residence, and I think the applicant informed me it is vacant, nobody lives in it. But as you drive along, the area, you realize that it's more of a mixed use. We have residences, we have commercial nodes surrounding this area. So when the applicant informed staff about the rezoning, we asked him what was the intended use, and he informed staff the idea was to rezone this property to use as a family-owned restaurant. We did recommend B1 because the B1 does not allow for drive-through, because we felt that since there's a residential neighborhood close to this area, a B1 will be of a less intensity in comparison to the R1, which is currently on site. And so staff believes that this rezoning, if approved, would blend well with the surrounding land uses, especially considering the fact that the intersection is made up of commercial uses as you go, as you drive around. We have a donut shop right across the street. Mm-hmm. We have, I think it's a funeral home, and then there's a gas station, and there's I think a recycling facility. Mm-hmm. So even though behind the site is residence, we believe that the intersection, which is all commercial, would blend well if the zoning is approved. I have an area map showing the site in question. So I just wanted to go ahead and show the pictures of the intersection. As you can see on here, we have a commercial zoning, commercial uses at the intersection, and so staff believes that the proposed family-owned restaurant would ideally fit into the current existing uses in the neighborhood. I have here showing the zoning map. As you can see, the property is the only one zoned for residents, but if you look on our zoning map, you realize that the four corners of the intersection is all zoned for commercial. In fact, looking on the south, it's a B2, which is a high intensity zoning. But we did advise the applicant to go with a B1, which is a low intensity commercial use. And we believe that zoning will have less impact on the R1 zonings that surrounds it. So staff believes that if this rezoning is approved, it will blend well with the existing zoning at the intersection, and we believe that intersection is a busy intersection that will do well for a commercial use, and so we highly recommend this rezoning to local business. The future land use map, which depicts the future growth for the city per our comprehensive plan, depicts this area for commercial. I believe it was mainly commercial because the loop and it's high traffic street, and so putting commercial along the loop will probably generate more uses that will create more profit if put along the street. And so the future land use call for the area to be designated as commercial. So in this regard, the zoning is perfectly in line with the future land use map and does not violate it. And so staff believes the zoning does not also violate the 2003 comprehensive plan. I have notification map showing that we did send out 200 letters to people who live within 200 feet of this property. Nobody responded in opposition, or nobody responded in favor of it. I have a picture here showing the site. Per our discussion with the applicant, he plans to keep the house as is. The only modification will be within the house, internal modification. Per the zoning requirements of the B1, he cannot put a drive-through, and so he cannot do any rigorous or any external modification that would change the whole perception of, change the general character of the house. So even if it's converted into a restaurant, you will still drive along the street and see it as a house with a restaurant being used in it. I have site photos showing the west, which is the funeral home. Picture on the south, which is a gas station, very well-functioning commercial activity. On the north, we have an apartment which is abandoned, and one of the reasons why staff wanted to recommend this rezoning was the fact that we believe that if this restaurant come into existence, it could probably propel other developments along the area. Seeing this building, it's abandoned. We believe something needs to come into that intersection to create a ripple effect that would have other businesses or encourage development from other businesses into the neighborhood. And on the east, we have some residences on the east side of the property. So our key points to note: per the future land use map, the intersection and the property are labeled for commercial use, and so in that regard, this rezoning does not violate the 2003 comprehensive plan. The rezoning will establish a commitment to cluster commercial zoning. As you can see on the previous map, we have commercial development along, on the 4 intersections, and so we believe this would also blend well with the existing commercial uses. And it will limit sprawl and provide a catalyst site for future commercial development, like I said earlier. And the applicant will erect a physical buffer between the property and surrounding residential zones. So going back to the zoning map, per our zoning regulations, if any commercial development comes adjacent to a residential zoning, there's the need to create some buffering or screening, and the applicant is aware of that. As soon as he starts working on his permits, he will need to provide a fence to screen his development from the residential zoning behind his development. In this regard, staff want to recommend that P&Z look at this rezoning and recommend approval for it, since it does not violate the comprehensive plan, and we believe that this development has a great potential of encouraging development in the neighborhood. And also, if you drive along the intersections, all the other 3 corners are zoned for commercial uses, and so this rezoning will be in line with the other existing zoning district. This will bring my presentation to an end, and I'll be willing to take any questions from the commission.
You said buffer, so just like a 6-foot fence is all that's required around?
6-foot privacy fence.
Okay.
So
And no kind of greenery or anything at this point as far as bushes or anything to break that up?
No, our zoning requirement does not call for that, but I would say privacy fence, so he cannot put a chain fence. It has to be a wooden fence.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, that was mine.
Okay. I think that's all. This is an open meeting, so if there's anybody that'd like to speak for or against, feel free to step up to the mic and express your thoughts. Okay.
Yes, my name is...
Come. Yes, State your name, please.
My name is Adam Flores, and I'm the owner of these properties since last year. And as he describes everything, I just want to say that yes, I'm interested in changing to a business,
Okay.
the house, to a home, like home-made food, restaurant. That way, we can provide a little bit of different, I guess, Tex-Mex food
Understood.
for the community, and that's the reason we're
Okay.
here and trying to change the zoning of the property.
Oh, wonderful. Any questions or anything?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you very
Oh,
much.
thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Okay. Being said, anybody would like to make a motion for or against?
I'll make a motion to approve the zoning change from R1 single-family residential to B1 local business for Lot 15E, City Block 64, parcel ID 26139, Nacogdoches, Texas.
Is there a second?
I'd second that well-stated motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? For the motion passes. We'll move on to number 4 on our agenda. Be a presentation from Stephen F. Austin, geography students, housing assessment survey for the city of Nacogdoches. Welcome, everyone.
So today is a great day for me and the planning department and the planning commission as well. We are really excited and really grateful that a whole class decided to do their project to favor the city. And I think when I came into the city, one of my goals was to partner well with the SFA to work on project for us, and not just theory project, but project that are very practical and which we can implement in the future. So I was privileged to work with Dr. McDonald, which I will call you to join me up here, to work on a housing assessment for the city of Nacogdoches. So I'll let you introduce yourself and the class, and then we'll start the presentation.
Oh, good.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Darrell McDonald. I'm the professor in geography, and I want to thank Leo and Caleb for allowing us to enter into this idea where we're trying to work with the interaction between the university and the community. And, SFA is looking for transformational learning opportunities. And here we have a group of young people who are going to do very well to give you some ideas of what they see on a daily basis. And we've had a chance to sort of focus on a couple of things that I think the city planner has a feeling to get some input about. And so we're more than excited to be here, and thank you very much for your opportunity for us to work together as a team. And I will now introduce, we're going to have a series of 5 presentations, and the teams will come up, introduce themselves, and provide their comments. We do have large-size posters that we would like to invite you onto the second floor after the meeting if you have time, or they'll be here for the next couple of days, or for wherever you need it, so you can go and look at sort of the composite of what their ideas are visually, as well as the PowerPoints that you see here today and the comments they're going to make. So at this point, I'm going to turn the podium over to Team 1 captain, please, Chase Wood. And then they'll be followed by Team 2, 3, 4, and 5. They go by wards, but we did put the Southwest ward into 2 pieces, so they're going to be disconnected. They're going to be 1 and Team 5. But
Okay.
with that, have at it. Bring your team up. Introduce them. Introduce yourself to the commission, please. Introduce
Chase
yourself
Wood.
to the commission.
Hey.
How's it going? My group is Matthew Hines, Caleb Krnavek, and Jonah Blackman. So, do we have it up? Okay, cool. Yeah, so we were in charge of the housing analysis of the Southwest Ward, which is actually, which is split up into two presentations today just because we had 5 groups. So we were the northern portion of South Fredonia. So this is just showing you the ward layout, which I'm sure y'all are familiar with, and just kind of showing you where we're located at. So the goal of the project was to just sample as many houses as we could from the street, not like going up knocking on doors or anything like that, considering the quality of it, the location, and the accessibility of the houses. So whether that's being able to find it, what it looks like from the street, and the overall quality of it. So the things we took into consideration are the condition of the housing itself, the yard, the structure of the house, the street condition, so what the street looks like around it, and if a sidewalk was present. And the last goal that we have is to assess each problem of the ward and present you guys with a viable solution, or the city with something just to chew on, something to think about. So why this project was chosen? It was chosen to help put good and bad housing and neighborhood qualities into data for viewing and analysis, because nobody wants to go drive around and try to figure out what's wrong. It's easier to just bring it all in a poster or presentation. So with our observation and recommendations, we hope to help in narrowing down options into tangible and impactful solutions. So we're looking to bring you guys with the most plausible thing that we can do that's going to bring the biggest impact. So we don't want to, money's an issue everywhere. So we don't want to bring y'all something that's huge and completely unreasonable.
Understood.
And then housing and residential quality in Nacogdoches varies from ward to ward, which you don't necessarily realize if you don't have a routine that is kind of spontaneous. So if you're just going to school or if you're just going from your house to work, you only see the same areas, so you don't really see any issues with that portion. So our method, that is way scaled up. So our methods for data collection, we used an app that basically synced it to an Excel file on my computer. And that just helped us where we didn't have to do pen and paper. The houses were randomly selected for our portion of the ward, and each person surveyed roughly 40 houses, give or take.
Wow.
And for our portion of the ward, we had 120 samples.
Wow.
So what we actually found, so this is the frequency of the yard conditions. So for yard condition, we did 1 to 3, just to not get too nitpicky with it. And as you can see, there's an overwhelming amount of 2s, which is not bad, not great, not poor. And then 3s being the smallest at 15%, and then for the rating of 1, we had 28%, so roughly a quarter. So this is our map of all of our houses with their corresponding rank and housing condition. So this kind of shows you where our samples were, and puts it into respect with what they're actually ranked. As you can see, it's fairly spaced out. There's not a lot of clustering going on with highs or lows. So that was pretty encouraging. So this is basically a pie chart of that map that you saw. So it just shows you how many of each we had. We had one house that ranked a 5 on our scale, which we thought the poster would be here. There's like a standard picture for how we rank the houses. So there's
Okay,
a
that
1
was a
example,
question
2,
I
3,
had.
4, 5, and 6. or
Okay,
5.
so you have a way of breaking that down, how you've shown what each condition is?
Right, yeah,
Okay.
that's on the poster upstairs.
Gotcha.
So as you can see, we had one house that was a 5. I think we had 2 to 3 that was a 1, so 2%. 2s made up 32% of our sample. 3s is the majority at 44%, and 4 is 21%. So it's pretty spaced out.
Is that ranking from?
Yeah, so
A good
it's-
condition to worse?
1 is the poorest condition, and 5 is the overall best. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
sorry about
thank
that. Same thing with the yard conditions, so 1 being the poorest, 3 being the highest.
Okay.
So the correlation, so we basically wanted to look for a major trend in the data that we saw. So we collected, a bunch of data, but we didn't want to just focus on one thing. So basically we went through and we looked at the houses that ranked lowest in yard. So we just did 1 for yard. And then also that were coupled with a 3 or less in housing condition. And we're going to call those our focus homes. So that's going to be where we see the biggest issues or where the biggest rise for quality needs to be.
Okay.
And as you can see here, it's very spaced out. So it's distributed evenly across our portion of the ward, which also goes back to the fact that overall quality as well. But if we focus broadly, then it can bring up the overall level.
So you're saying 20%, 26% of your 127 houses is with the yard condition of 1, is that what?
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
yard condition of 1 and a housing condition of 3 or less. So
Yep,
26%
So
are
in
what
other
we
words,
consider.
the ones that need the most work is
Right,
what you're
yeah,
saying.
in
Okay.
both aspects of housing and yard condition.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then we also went through and we got the property appraisal values for all of our focus homes off of the county website. Yeah. And we kind of just put that in a couple of charts for you guys so that you can see that the majority of our homes are increasing in value over the past 4 years from 2014 to 2018. And then we have, I think, one home that did not change at all. I don't know. That's odd, but it roughly stayed the same. And then we have, what is that? 19% decreased in value. And then over here on the right side of that, you can kind of see how increased or how decreased they are. So the majority of them increased around 5%, as you can tell on that line. And then for the decreased values, it kind of just varies pretty heavily. So our main issues that we ran into is going to be overgrown trees. So that reduces curb appeal and it blocks sunlight from the yard, resulting in, dirt patches in the yard or no grass at all, as well as trash in the yard. And then we had many houses that need a new coat of paint or a power wash. And we believe that that would bring up the overall quality of the house because that's not very aesthetically pleasing. And then we have maintenance. So some of the roads where it goes from a major road to, say, just a residential road, some of the transition points are pretty rough, whereas the actual roads themselves might not be bad, but where you hit that T, there's potholes and things of that nature, which are harder to keep up with at transition points. But and then there are 0 sidewalks in our ward. We did not find a single house in our sample. I mean, there's not 0, but in our sample, there was 0 sidewalks.
As far as in front of the houses.
Right. And then the addresses on the curb or on the house are almost non-existent in some portions of the ward. So that seems to be an issue, whether that's with, emergency response or
Exactly.
finding it in general.
That's a big deal, yeah.
Right. So here I'm going to pass it over to my team to talk about our solutions.
How's it going? To talk about what y'all can do to help out the houses to trim back the trees and bushes back from the curbs and houses, filling the potholes, so that both the people driving the road can drive safe. Another one could be a community outreach to help pick up trash, and also to help out have someone else to paint everything on the curbs, so that would also help out.
All right. So one main problem that we had was there was a lack of stop signs. So in this map here, we pointed out some focus points that we would think would be a good addition, as well as some blind corners, so for pulling out.
So were they missing or just never been there?
They were not present.
Okay.
And then with these additions, it would improve the overall pedestrian and motorist safety.
So you think maybe having text out or somebody looking at that to analyze, just the safety, saying, hey, look, reassess maybe some of these other streets that haven't been looked at and say, hey, stop signs or arrow signs or whatever. Is that what you're stating? You
that
think?
Would point out, yeah. So
Okay.
so someone come to
Again, just for the safety of the pedestrians and the people. Understood. Okay.
I'm going to finish it up. So, this is Ritchie Street Park. It serves as the only major community center in the Southwest Ward. Just some minor improvements to this park. We developed a map just showing a path just to get a visualization with some trees and some foliage, as well as there's a current baseball backstop, but it needs some improvement. We put soccer goals there. That's just to show how much space is just open and available for use. Minor improvements to Ritchie Park could bring an increase, not only an increased property value to the surrounding area, but it could also foster great community relationships. It could serve as
Isn't there a covered area at that Ritchie Park or no?
Yes, over to the left in the
That's what I
left
thought.
image.
Like a place to have like parties or birthday parties or something. I thought there was, but.
And then to go along with the community relationships, with some improvement, it could make it a better location for church barbecues or stuff like that. And it's also very close to Burke Quinns Jones Elementary, so that could serve as a great field day kind of deal. We think this is a viable option because we click that.
That was your one thing.
There we go. And then, because Nacogdoches does green spaces very well. Pioneer Park and Pecan Park and Lanata Creek, it's very good. And then to go along with that, the downtown is, you've taken a lot of pride in the downtown and worked on the historical sites, reserving those and developing shopping. And in the same way, pride in one's community is infectious, and an individual is more likely to improve their own curb appeal when it fits into the overall aesthetic. Communities thrive when their environment is visually pleasing and physically safe. We feel by considering some of our recommendations, it would put these neighborhoods in good standing to thrive where it is ahead and improve where there's opportunity. So I'll turn it over to him for some final questions.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? So the biggest thing that you see is obviously, you know, again, I think that's something the city's already probably fighting a little bit is the mobility of people, you know, having curbs and being able to walk and accessibility. And then obviously it's something that I didn't even think about is the safety that y'all brought up, you know, as far as stop signs and maybe reassessing those areas just to see the safety of, you know, people walking or biking or whatever they're doing. And then obviously maybe utilizing some stuff that's already there that, you know, maybe, maybe inexpensive to utilize. I think those are great points. That's something I had never thought about. So,
Yeah, our main focus was to improve just pedestrian safety because transportation is an issue in some portions.
and a lot of things that y'all pointed out, that's something that, and I think y'all have done a good job. Is a lot of times we get these these analyzing things, and it's just these big pipe dreams. And so the stuff that you've brought up are you know, fairly inexpensive things, you know, going literally cutting trees or bushes or, you know, and pressure washing and some painting are not unreasonable things. Again, like I said, there's a lot of, I think y'all brought it up, which is great, a lot of service organizations that are looking for things. And so it's a good opportunity to maybe to try to funnel that direction. And so,
Right, and all the overgrown blind corners that we saw are vegetation, so it's not like a hill in somebody's yard. It's
Yeah.
something that's doable, just like going out there with
it
basically
just
a
needs to be,
machete.
it just needs to be looked at and assessed and brought before somebody that may be overlooked or whatever. So,
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, we wanted to definitely improve the overall community safety and feel to where
Sure.
sidewalks is a viable solution.
Very
Whereas
cool.
if it starts at a pedestrian lane or stop signs, we just want to make
Just
everybody
stop
feel
signs to
safer
start with. Yeah.
and feel comfortable letting their kids walk to school
No
or
doubt,
walk
no
wherever.
doubt, no doubt. Or walking to the park.
Right, yeah, walking to the improved park.
Yeah. Well, cool. Anything else?
Just as an aside, I've only been back in Nacogdoches for about a year. I only discovered Ritchie Park over this past weekend. When I grew up here, it was the city dump.
Really?
Yeah, we had heard it referred to as landfill park.
Really?
And I live in that ward, and I had no idea that it existed
That's- I
until we
didn't know
did this
that either.
project.
Yeah,
crazy.
it was the city dump, and taking the same routes that we took when I was a child, and I don't remember the name of the street. You go up Power Street, and then it sort of goes out toward Ritchie Street. I was amazed to see some of the same houses that are still there, now condemned or abandoned, that are
Right.
sitting there on that road that we
Yeah.
took to the city dump. But I was so impressed with the park because it looks great.
It does look really good, yes.
Yeah.
It's well kept. for
Again,
sure.
are still probably underutilized. I mean, there's still
Yeah.
some opportunity there.
It
That
was a beautiful day, yeah.
and so
And
there's.
we want to encourage people to buy those condemned houses or to want to move in that space by creating a community outreach that they would
We
be
have a cool
interested in.
park and stuff like that where people can be out and about, just kind of revitalize. Sure.
Right.
Very cool. Any other questions? Well, thank y'all very much.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Appreciate y'all.
guys.
Thank y'all so much.
Team two, please.
I'm gonna turn that air conditioner on.
A little bit.
Hang on 1 second. Let me turn that. How are y'all?
Good, how are you?
Good, good.
All right, I'm Colton Martin, and we're doing the Nacogdoches Southeast Ward, and this is my group members.
My name is Rafael Acevedo. My name is Trey Hughes. I'm Derek Thompson.
And here I went ahead and included here the map of the ward, just kind of show the area that we did. I focused on the area kind of northwest, the Pearl Street to West Austin Street, and then they divided the other part up by, yes, 21. I mean, we split it up by 21 north and 21 south,
Okay.
and that's how we broke that part up. Our objectives were to randomly sample and classify houses based on their conditions, to research examples of ways to improve the community once we find out what our issues are, and come up with a plan that not only increases the property values of Nacogdoches, but also to make Nacogdoches a more beautiful city, and make recommendations on what improvements that we see fit. So this is just a little background on a random sampling. To achieve pure random sampling, we took the CAD file that we got from the city of Nacogdoches, and we found out how many houses were in that parcel, or all the parcels, and there was 2,655. And then we found this little application Google has that just randomly picks a number, and then all we did was just put generate. And we did that 40 times for each one, just to make sure that we weren't, clustering way too many spots here. And then we went back to the attribute table in ArcMap, and then we just found the number and then went to the address right next to that number. That way we didn't have clustering or anything.
Understand.
And for our methodology, we used the app sheet that Chase designed, and to record the address, the housing conditions, and the outside aesthetics of the houses. And after the addresses were found, I put it in the ArcMaps attribute table, and we went to each house and recorded the information. And after running the data through ArcMap, we produced a map of the wards containing the location of the houses we sampled. And this is yours here. All right.
For the housing conditions, more of the houses that we surveyed fell into the average excellent category, and they only beat out the poor houses by 13. Majority of the ones that were poor that we saw were on Pearl Street, Power Street, and Looneyville Road. Most of the foundations were in good shape, the solid ones. Majority of the pier and beams were in disrepair, however. For our roads, we didn't really have any problems with roads. Most of them are average to good, with the exception of Pearl Street, which had numerous potholes. And on the stretch between the intersection of Main Street and Austin Street, our yards, the majorities were decent. Some yards were in areas with degraded homes. They contained trash, were unkept, and had a little bit of grass. And here's some charts that we made that show housing conditions and foundation types, whether they were.
Do you see any kind of correlation between the foundation types? I mean, I was just wondering why y'all decided to collect that data.
We had actually 71 homes in the housing conditions that were from average to excellent, and we have 71 homes that also had a foundation type of as a solid foundation. So all the homes that we saw that were in excellent to good, or average to excellent category, were mainly solid foundations. We had very few that were pier and beam. So most of our pier and beam homes were the ones that trended toward a more downgraded state.
Do you think that's due to age, maybe that they're older houses, obviously
Yes,
pier and beam, or, okay.
I've looked at, in another class, I did was looking at aerial photography, and I know the home I live in right now, this photography was in the 60s, and the house I live in is still there, and it doesn't even look new then, so that was several.
Probably wouldn't.
These are some examples of the houses we sampled. You see we have an excellent house, an average house, and a poor house, to say. And here's a map of the properties that we sampled in the southwest ward, or southeast ward. Do you want to say something?
I'll do it from here. This is our appraisal data. We just pulled 27 homes. We pulled a few from each 1 through 5 category. We didn't want to go through all 130. And generally, I mean, we didn't find one house that decreased value. Some of them, small amount, it might have increased, but we didn't find one that the value decreased. Several of them, the blue showing their value back in 2015.
So
and
some
then
of them jumped up a lot.
Yes, sir. Some of them, I know the house with the largest, they did like $80,000 worth of renovations to that home.
Okay.
But some of them, it didn't show any type of renovations. I guess the value's just been going up. And that's one thing we noticed. We didn't find anything, nothing was losing its value that we sampled.
Do you, and you may not have correlated that, but do you have any idea about what the average appreciation rate, or how much they went up over that 4 years? Or
4.5% for the
Really?
average, but
Okay.
then
That's a
not,
question we get a lot, I think as the city in general, our houses in general appreciating in town, and so that's a question I get every day, and so that's the reason I was just wondering, so that's interesting.
All right, and then this is just kind of talks about the data that we have, just really what I just said. There you go.
And then as far as recommendations, we broke it down to the main one being improving streetlights, especially on Pearl Street. Just for an example, we'll get to more, we'll break these down later. Another one is using empty lots for community gardens. This is going to be just vacant lots that are serving little to no purpose that could be used as a community or neighborhood garden. Tree trimming, like what was said before, to improve the sunlight penetration and visibility around corners. This is just going to be that simple trimming around corners and whatnot. Yard maintenance and beautification. This is going to be just keeping a well-maintained yard, keeping everything pretty. And then city buybacks, which Derek will get to, is basically just buying unused properties or vacant properties and, in a sense, flipping them. So starting with lighting, the main one, or the main street that we wanted to focus on was Pearl Street. We noticed that lighting was only on one side of the street, and in most cases it was every other power pole that it was on. So one of our just simple recommendations would be adding in between those two power poles on the other side of the road to maximize visibility and light as far as pedestrians and driving.
It is a dark street.
It is.
There's
It is a
there's
very
lot of
dark
people
street.
Walking, and so it is kind of.
We do have a few members in our class that live on Pearl Street, and we all agreed that lighting was definitely a thing to look into. And then these examples are actually in Diboll, and they simply just added a median, added trees in, just a part of the beautification and whatnot. And they added a street light with 2 lamps on each side. Just a simple little example of what could possibly be done.
All right. So for the urban gardens, I know that there's several lots on Pearl Street, just all over Nacogdoches, where there's nothing on. And I'd read an article several years ago about how cities were purchasing these just vacant lots, or sometimes the owners would just let them use it. But going through clearing, most of them are cleared already, and just cultivating a garden for the community. Either people did like it's like a community-wide thing where they kind of pulled their money in for it, or they also use it to feed needy families and stuff like that. And I mean, not only would it be useful in that sense, it's not very expensive to do. And I mean, it would make the area look better when you drive by and you see a nice, pretty garden instead of just, an empty lot with bahia grass just sticking up everywhere.
I know that becomes an issue here in town. I know, a lot of times with those vacant lots, they are not being mowed or manicured like
Yes.
they're supposed to. And so then what ends up happening is the city goes and mows them and then, sends a bill to the owner, or, has to, whatever. And so being able to try to figure out, having somebody research that, find out, and writing them a letter saying, hey, can we use this or whatever it may be, something, like you say, just not having it grown up and looking terrible, having something different, and then it becomes less of a strain on the city to, to go after those people to get it maintained and that sort of thing. So it's a neat idea.
And here I just included like a picture. This is a lot there on Pearl Street. And like I said, it's just, it's just growed up bahia grass, and there's not anything on it. All you'd have to do was mow it and come through with a tiller and just, till it up a little bit, and then you could go through and row. And then people up and down Pearl Street, or like I said, a food bank or something, could come move in and grow, tomatoes and other vegetables like that.
Interesting.
Vegetation control. This is the removal of overgrowth, invasive plants, and stimulate grass growth. It's a problem some yards have. And here we got 2 photos of a place on, I think, Pearl Street and E.J. Campbell Boulevard. As you can see, there's a bunch of overgrow and there's a bunch of invasive plants. And on the second photo, which is on, as I said, E.J. Campbell Boulevard, you see that there's a bunch of plants. And it's a problem for drivers because you can't see any oncoming cars.
And I can speak for myself too. Like my house, we haven't been the best on doing it, but when you have a bunch of overgrowth like that, it shades out your yard. Grass doesn't want to grow in the house. Just overall, it doesn't look as good when you're looking at a house and it's shaded over. And it can be a pretty nice house, but kind of adds like a spooky type feel to it when it's all shaded in, and just kind of makes it look. It might be a 5, but it might drop it down to a 4 or 3 just because of the way that the
Well, that's something that the city's striving to do, is try to, be the garden capital of Texas, I think, or whatever the designation is. And so, being able to, that's a pretty easy fix, going in
Yes.
and just trimming some trees up and some bushes and that sort of thing. I mean, that's not expensive. And so that's the thing that, a lot of times the city has to look at, is the expense involved with that. So that's fairly reasonable.
And another problem I've noticed with it too is that a lot of it's invasive species. There's not many natives, and since they're invasive, they just take off and they beat out all the natives.
Sugar cane and other things.
There's a lot of sugar cane, a lot of privet. Privet's one of the main things up and down. I've noticed on Pearl Street that blocks out everything.
I propose a maybe city buyback problem wouldn't be the answer, but maybe let's get investors involved in the Southeast Ward. These two houses here have 10 roofs. They're on pier and beam, and they look like they haven't been painted in a long time. The home on the bottom, I believe, is what people should have the opportunity to be able to live in. It would improve the aesthetics of Nacogdoches and mitigate the cost of revenue generated from renting or selling. Flint, Michigan did a citywide beautification project in 2015 called Beyond Blight Elimination Framework. They removed 71,000 tons of garbage, boarded up and demolished vacant structures, brought up 95% of properties to compliance of local ordinances.
That's a big deal.
If Nacogdoches were to implement this citywide, community would increase in aesthetics drastically. This would boost property values and instill a sense of pride, and could in turn lead to more activism in the community.
I tell you what, that's something to definitely, maybe research a little further, is just to see exactly how they did that. I mean, I see the points, but actually being able to figure out how they went about doing it, because I know Flint in the past is, they've had trouble monetarily, and they've had their struggles as well, and so
Lead pipe
figuring out how they
problems.
were able to, example like to bring up 95% of properties to compliance, that's a big deal, to local ordinances. And so, figuring out exactly how they did it monetarily, every aspect of that, that's really interesting, because I haven't heard about that, so that's pretty cool.
Positive notes in our sector was that our streets were pretty much in good shape. I don't remember seeing any potholes. Speed limits were appropriate, and adequate stop signs and adequate traffic lights. The majority of homes by a sizable margin fell into the average of the excellent category.
Okay. Interesting.
So in conclusion, the areas that we surveyed are generally in good shape, but with a few modifications such as streetlights, sidewalks, and just a little bit of property beautification, Nacogdoches could achieve a feeling of unity and beauty. I mean, everybody was just, if they start to see, everybody else around them is starting, do it.
Snowball.
Yes, it might start off 4 or 5 people, and the neighbor next to him might try to do the same thing, and before you know it, you might have the majority of a street competing, maybe trying to see who can have the best yard instead of
Most
just.
definitely.
Yes, sir.
Most definitely.
And by utilizing vacant lots as either neighborhood gardens, parks, or building new homes, the empty spaces could be transformed into beautiful additions to the community.
Very cool.
And here we just have our data sources that we use to come up with all of our mapping. And any questions?
Yeah, any questions?
I'm just curious, what did you say the name of the Flint project was, from blight to, I'm sorry.
I'll go back.
Yeah, beautiful.
It was
Beyond Blight.
Beyond Blight Elimination
Beyond Blight.
Framework.
Okay.
That's
Thank
interesting.
any more?
Good job.
Great job.
Thank y'all
Thank
very
y'all.
much. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Team 3, please, take the stage.
Good evening.
Evening.
I'd like to start out by thanking Mr. Leo and Mr. Caleb for giving us this project to gain this experience, and thank y'all, the council, for allowing us to present our ideas to y'all.
Sure.
And so, my name is Denver Hamilton, and my team consisted of Megan Zooey, Samantha Valencia, Zach Burleson, and Christopher Smith.
Welcome.
Our objectives of this ward for we were assigned the Northeast Ward, which is a pretty wealthy ward considering where it's at. And we was analyzing our ward, and we separated it based on where we was, kind of how the houses were connected. There was a lot of subdivisions, so some of our areas were larger than other members. And we wanted to combine our findings and kind of see what was the most likely problems and figure out what we can do to solve those problems. This was the map that we created. Chase Wood, the leader of Group 1, actually created a app that we used through our phones to rate these houses on. The houses were ranked on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being condemned, 2 being the lowest it can go without a condemned sign, 3 average, 4 better than average, 5 the highest. And then we had the ranking of the yards of 1 being the worst, with there being trash or dead grass, 3 being the perfect yard. We also ranked the streets of the entrances, whether there was potholes or how wide or narrow. We also looked at the structure itself as the foundation, whether it was a solid foundation, whether it was good, it was bad, or whether it was a good or bad pillar beam foundation. And so we decided to represent our findings based on the overall rating by combining all those, so 5 plus 3 plus 3, which is 11, and subtract 1 from that total amount, so then it would be on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being the best instead of being 11, to make it more simple.
Okay. How many houses did y'all do?
We did 40 houses each and had a total of 200.
Okay.
So our overall property conditions were fairly nice, especially in the further northeast you went, the better the houses were, the nicer the properties, the higher the value. There wasn't a lot of crosswalks or stop signs. And I had a street, Crisp Road. It also turns into John Richardson. It goes from Park to Star. Right when it turns into John Richardson, there is a patch of trees right there, and in that curve you cannot see oncoming traffic. And so there was a safety issue right there because how skinny that road is. You don't have enough time to get over to either let that car by or just get out the way. And so I would like to turn it over to my team at this moment.
Something that I found was on Post Oak Road off of Northeast Stallings Drive. I have what you could call a compact car. I don't know if it actually is one or not, but I can fit into those parking spots. I found that road was extremely narrow, and when a truck drove by me, I had to skirt over to the very edge of the road, which this will be addressed by my other team members, but that could also be an issue for pedestrians because if someone was just walking along the side of the road, they would have to walk in the ditch, basically, to get out of the way of a car. So that's what I found.
So I had the area kind of in the middle of our ward towards Nacogdoches High School, and my findings were there weren't many crosswalks as well as sidewalks, and considering that it's near a high school where students walk a lot, I feel that there should be more safety implemented in it. As everybody has kind of been stating, we're all about pedestrian safety. Yeah.
And going along with the sidewalks thing, I know that looking into the future, we might be starting to think about sidewalks a bit more. But when I was surveying the northeast corner of Nacogdoches, like the furthest northeast you could go, there was a neighborhood actively under construction, building new houses where there weren't room for sidewalks or anything. So even in the houses that are being built for the future of Nacogdoches, that's a problem that will probably continue to persist. And I think it would be good if we looked into, for our future construction projects, planning ahead for that. And then the other big thing that I found in the area near Gay Street specifically, when I was surveying the houses, I found that I couldn't see a lot of the addresses, as was mentioned earlier in another presentation. And again, just for things like deliveries and especially emergency services or anything of that nature, it would save some vital time for things like, ambulances that need to find people in need. Every second counts in that regard, and if we could have a standardized way of being able to see that, it would help a lot. Like, we saw the paint on the curb where it would be, but like the numbers had just been faded over time. So I feel like going through and rejuvenating those would help a lot.
So do you think, as far as new construction, that ought to be some sort of a stipulation as far as new construction, commercial and residential, just having some sort of a sidewalk put across, and just in moving forward with that? Is that something that y'all are seeing?
Yeah,
is
I think that
important?
would
And
be
then obviously some sort of signage for each house as far as addressing as well. Sounds like a big topic as well. So, okay.
Along with this, we also saw an overall upward trend in the appraisals, especially towards the tip of the Northeast Ward, where all the construction is going around. A lot of the improvements are helping out the ward. Along with this, we also have a lot of ideas for improvements. The biggest one being sidewalks and crosswalks, having that safety for pedestrians and parents, children to be able to walk to school or walk to a nearby park would be an amazing step, especially safety-wise. Along with this, a lot of yards that I saw towards the southern area of our ward had some more dying grass over right off of Park Street. And then the road condition overall was actually fairly good throughout the entire ward, but having that overall safety could help out. And as far as steps that could be taken, there are always service organizations on campus that are looking for hours. So having them go out and pick up trash in an abandoned house's yard, or paint new addresses on the curbs or even on some of the front pillars of houses would be a very big help. Also having maybe some multi-tier or multi-story private business buildings throughout the ward could help. Say maybe a lawyer's office, an insurance company, something like that. Something that just a group could go in, rent out a space, and work in. As far as good things of our ward, we had overall a very good sample. Most of our houses were above 3s. Most of the yards, roads, everything was all up to par, even better. And then I think I'm going to hand it over to Denver for the very last part.
Questions, comments, concerns?
So the biggest thing that y'all are seeing, obviously, is again just the sidewalks are the biggest thing. I mean, that you're seeing there as far as the conditions of the houses and things in your particular ward seem to be in fairly, like you said, 3 or aboves, and so just trying to get some money or some thoughts into doing what do they call it? Where the connectability of the neighborhoods and that sort of thing.
Yes, sir. They're very nice houses.
How would you say that the lighting was in that area?
Fairly good. But especially in in some of those subdivisions, the houses were real nice, but you didn't see a lot of street lights.
Again, I know y'all just kind of briefed over it, but as far as the appraisal values, did you do any kind of analyzation on that to see, how much they're appreciating? Again, that's something that's I see is a big deal to people. They always want to know how things are appreciating in different areas, and so were y'all able to do that or analyze that at all?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. With the appraisal and the further northeast you went, the higher the appraisal was. In the subdivisions, they seemed to stay in the upper 90s to lower 100,000 range. As you went further south, where there was more isolated houses, that's where we had more of the lower class houses. The property values still increased, but not as much. They were below 50,000, I believe.
Okay.
And so those were some areas where there was some trash or the house was kind of run down.
Understood.
And especially with the narrow street, like Crisp. And so we was also thinking with those improvements based on those subdivisions, since those are most likely upper class business or so, having something like a tailor or a cleaner for them to take their suits or clothes. That would be something small, compact, that wouldn't take up a lot of room, but yet be more convenient instead of having to drive halfway across the city to do that, or a coffee shop.
So for the most part, everything seems to be pretty good in that ward, is what you're saying.
The aesthetics was very nice. It was in good shape.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all.
Move forward, please.
Give him 2 seconds, I got something. You know, the northwest.
Good afternoon. Sorry, not one to use a microphone.
You're fine, go ahead. You can just talk normal, it's fine.
Can you
Go
hear me?
ahead. Yeah, you're good, I'll pick you up, no big deal.
Good afternoon. My name is Spencer Miller, and I'm the group leader for the Northwest Ward that we are assigned to assess. And these are my team members.
Grayson Hinkle, King Ford.
And just a quick overview before we get in. Our ward was probably one of the better wards, on par with the Northeast Ward. If we had to make a list of which wards to assess or put your efforts towards, ours would probably be on the bottom. It's a very good ward, a lot of good houses, and we're excited to show you what we found.
Okay.
Very good findings. All right, here's our contents. We're going to start from the mission, the data collected, and resolutions, any questions you might have at the end.
Okay.
We were tasked to find 160 houses in our ward and determine their self-worth. We, as a class, we came in with a consensus to assess the roof, street, foundation, and yard conditions through a scale of 1 to 3, while the overall appearance of the house will be rated 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, and the same for 3. In addition, we also challenged ourselves to find innovative ways to improve the Northwest Ward through the use of light fixtures, sidewalks, parks, pools, anything that can improve our ward. We had a very good ward, so, or if you can see that, 5 on the right side, over 100 of our houses out of 160, they were 5s. So they're in pristine condition, very well kept.
Wow.
Only a handful, or 2 handfuls, 3, if you have 3 hands. 12 were rated 3s. We had 0, 2s, or 1s.
Really? Wow, that's
So
interesting.
We had a very good overall house appearance.
Mhm.
We sampled over 31 streets in our ward, and we only found 7 sidewalks present out of those 160 houses. So there is a clear lack of sidewalks overall.
Seems to be
in
a big
Nacogdoches.
consensus across the board, yeah. Interesting.
For the street, foundation, yard, we didn't add that data because they're all very well good as well, and we didn't want to make like an eyesore. I mean, it's self-explanatory. This ward is very good. There's no additions you need to make to those houses. Here's our central appraisal district, our CAD data. We took, of those 31 streets, we took 9 streets, and we took 5 houses randomly selected on those streets, and we took the 5-year market data for those homes, and we averaged them up. So as you can see here, these first 5 streets, next 4 on the next page, Reggae is our overall best street. We can tell, the whole city can tell the improvements you're making on Reggae Street, and at that intersection where Austin Street is, you're widening Austin Street. Reggae is easily the big dog. Here's our last 4 streets. Oakview is on the most northern part of our ward. Very good houses there as well. And at the very bottom, we took all 9 of those streets and we added up the totals, and that's our average.
So you're just using the central appraisal district's appraised values on those houses is the data that you're using?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
very good number, I think.
Mhm.
Very good place to be for the ward. Here's our resolutions. I'll let my team members take over.
How y'all doing?
Good, good, good.
So, to kind of help solve the issue of crowded roadways that we tend to run to in Nacogdoches, we're going to propose a bike lane. We'll propose they're separate, because a lot of times when you're driving along North Street, you'll have bikers either on the sidewalk or they're right on the edge of the road, and that's not
Yep.
very safe for the flow of
Exactly
traffic or for the biker itself. So we're proposing that we have kind of a separated bike lane by a physical barrier, so there's more safety for people to safely commute to work if they don't have a vehicle to first get them to their workplace. Any questions about the bike lane, y'all?
Question is, like, for example, and that, I don't think that's something y'all can answer, but on North Street, I mean, it's just tight.
Mhm,
There's
it is
just no
tight, yes,
room.
sir.
So where do you put it? I guess that's been the biggest thing. I don't know who planned those streets years and hundreds of
Yes,
years
sir.
ago, way before all of us. But
It might have to be a mix of a bike lane and maybe a sidewalk.
yeah, I don't know what it was. It's been a long time.
Oh, yes,
but
sir.
it's I think that's the biggest struggle there. Is it's just even the turn lane is a little narrow. But anyway.
Yes, sir. All right, I'll turn it over to Grayson for the next one.
If I could interject about the bike lanes,
Mhm.
I feel like on North Street and University, all of the bigger streets, I
Mhm.
feel like that just have to be like a share the road kind of an
Mhm.
incident there. But more so the residential areas, that could be where you implement like a bike lane / pedestrian lane,
Mhm.
almost for them to share. We also have the creation of pocket parks.
think
So
that's
in
cool.
between buildings, I think there's already one in this little area.
Right.
around
Yeah, it's right over
Main
here.
Street,
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
So we could incorporate more of those.
Yeah.
We could also incorporate like a little area like that for food trucks. I think that'd be an interesting little place for people to,
So you
grab
think
lunch.
maybe, and we were talking about it earlier on Pearl Street too, but maybe trying to figure out how to incentivize the owners. I don't know how you go about that, but just saying, hey, look, you own this piece of property, you're not doing anything with it, just trying to figure out how to incentivize them, saying maybe, not to say a cut on your taxes, but hey, look, just if you'll let somebody use this in a different way, a pocket park or
Right.
something like that, that may be an option. Just calling people, say, hey, look, can we just put a garden or a pocket park on your property is a little difficult, so trying to figure out exactly how to, make it more attractive, I think is something to think about too, so. anyway.
Definitely. Introducing lower speed limits, specifically around Reggae Elementary School and the Early Childhood Research Center. I think that would drastically reduce the danger that a lot of students and family members have to face when they take care of their, go to pick up their children. and
Did you
whatnot.
notice crosswalks there?
There were several, not as many as I would have liked to have seen personally.
Uh-huh.
But another thing we saw there was I think you need to reduce the speed limit entirely across
Mhm.
Reggae, because it is a very
Just
used
got chicken
street,
fat.
especially with pedestrians. And this was also the area that I personally surveyed, or I guess the west side of Reggae Street.
Mhm.
And like what Chris and another member of the class said, the paint on the addresses
Mhm.
wasn't visible at all. So maybe you could ask the Boy Scouts to do it for some service hours or
Mhm.
something like that. I think that would
That seems to be a general thing too. That's stuff I hadn't even thought about. but
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Okay.
It's the little things you never notice.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, thank you.
So I was actually on this street today, North Mound, which is right behind us. It's adjacent to the Nacogdoches Memorial Hospital and also at Elder Elementary School. The picture on your left is right by that elementary school on the top of the hill. And I was running with some friends at 5 o'clock in the morning today, and one of our friends almost got hit by a car. I don't think a speed bump would, affect if he got run over. But I know personally as a driver,
Yeah.
if I know that there are speed bumps or some kind of obstacle on it, that I will pay more attention. So
So you think speed?
He couldn't see you for lack of lighting or no speed?
Well, they saw him. They
Okay.
just
Okay.
Yeah, they just weren't paying attention. They're on their phone.
It is not
Right.
slow. The real world experience there with that, yeah.
All right.
Interesting. Yeah, so you think sidewalks obviously is the key to that too, I'm sure.
Yes.
Everything, just running on sidewalks.
I think speed bumps would put a sense of awareness in our drivers. And maybe get
Yeah.
some security too.
And people use side streets and other things to cut through, to speed through, and so having those, there too. Interesting, okay. So generally, over your overview, you didn't see much in your area that needed a lot. I mean, the same type of things. Again, just the addressing and the sidewalks were your two biggest concerns. And lighting, what did you feel there? I think y'all may have just slightly addressed it, but what did you see as far as lighting?
If there was a portion to put like more lighting, it would be North Mound Street and Reggae.
Okay. So for the most part, and the house conditions and those things seem to be pretty solid and appreciating obviously pretty strongly there as well as far as values. Interesting. Okay.
Also, our ward being in the center, mostly all the commercial sales, food, eateries, drinks, bars.
Again, the walkability is a big thing, I think, too. You know, being able people from their house just walking down a sidewalk to those places instead of cars and traffic and those sorts of things. But and then again, the streets, you felt pretty good about those as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You didn't, I noticed, was your job to only look at houses, like single-family houses, not apartments? 'Cause
Yes,
I
we were
noticed-
asked only to look at single family.
Okay. Because I noticed that there's probably some apartments in your area, some of the bigger ones.
Yes,
might
there
be
are a
in your-
lot of like Stone Fort apartments. There's a lot of them. Our houses were pretty, kind of really in three main areas. Up north, past the Loop, Oakview Drive. West of North Street, there's a big, right behind like Wingstop, there's a park there. So like, there's a lot of things already in place for this ward to be
I
successful.
think something that'd be interesting after the fact. I'm just trying to think of other things in this. Would be, you know, and I don't know how you would go about finding that out, but like what's owner occupied and what are rentals and those sorts of things too. I think that may be for future data, maybe something, you know, for maybe future classes or something. But to think about that's something that may be beneficial too, just to see, you know, who owns what, or you know, not find out who owns it, but just do they owner occupied or is there a rental property? I think that may be some sort of a factor that may help compute some of this too. So
Yes, sir.
anyway, any other questions? Good. All right, thank y'all very much. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Team 5, please.
What are we in? This is the second part of Southwest. So y'all broke Southwest down into two parts, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Damon Cunningham. My team is Caitlin Stewart, Logan Daniels, and William Montgomery. So we took, I'll preface with, we took the Southwest Ward and broke it into two, like you asked. We took south of South Fredonia, so where it cuts going northeast through town, we have everything south and southeast of it.
Okay.
So we follow the line.
Yeah.
You'll see I've got a map in here. So our goal is to provide an appraisal sample of each ward to present to the city. But more than anything, we focused on determining improvements that could be done as far as public safety, property value, and aesthetics. So we focused less on actual appraisal data and more of what we saw while we were doing this. Like everyone else said, we used the Google AppSheets app, and we collected 10 properties each. We had a little bit of a smaller sample size than the other groups. We did 40 total properties in the sample, and the property assessment was based on the house condition, yard, the foundation, and the presence of sidewalk. So this is the actual Southwest Ward right here. In green are all single-family residences within the ward, and here is it zoomed in. In blue, you can see these are the actual properties that we sampled as we were doing our assessment.
So again, it was just generated by that Google.
Yes. Well, no, I
was just wondering how you got your group. Yeah.
We did a random sample. We had the attribute table from the CAD, and so we just pulled good old random grab numbers. It was
pulled it out of a hat.
Yeah, it wasn't very scientific. I'll be honest.
I'm just
but
asking now.
We tried to spread it out, and
Sure.
and I think we did a decent job of getting a good view of
broad
the
picture.
ward.
Sure,
Yes.
that's a big thing. He's getting that real broad picture of everything. So
Yes,
okay.
sir. So our big thing, like I said, was we were focusing on the actual things that we saw. So our recommendations, we've done them in order of what we think is most cost efficient and most feasible. We don't want to, propose something right off the bat that's going to cost a lot of money that the city may or may not have.
Sure.
So, like I said, this is in ascending order. Pedestrian lanes, the implementation of stop signs, speed bumps, increased vegetation management, because there's a lot of it that could be done. Adding streetlights, that's kind of a running theme. And later in the presentation, I'll show you a buyout program that we've gone to mirror. So in a lot of college towns, like Missoula, Montana, where the University of Montana is, and University of Texas in Austin, the neighborhoods will actually have a designated pedestrian or bike lane. Most of the neighborhoods that we worked in do have a street wide enough where you could put one in, and without putting a sidewalk, which might be more costly, you could just paint one of these in.
This is striping.
And I think that would be a much more feasible way, instead of trying to put in sidewalks and construction and all that.
That's interesting.
So using walkscore.com, Caitlin found the actual rating of walkability in a certain city. And right now, Nacogdoches' score out of 100 is 28 for walkability.
That's
so
walk score?
Yeah, walkscore.com. Yes, sir. And while she was running her cost analysis, it came out to that the estimated cost increase or decrease with each point of walk score can be associated roughly $3,000 of property value. So
that's interesting.
If you provide more walkability to pedestrians, that potentially has its potential to increase values of home values.
That's definitely something to kind of coattail off of. I mean, that's something that people will pay attention to as a homeowner, being able to say, look, this is the statistics is a pretty solid number, so that's pretty interesting. I've never seen that or heard that.
And Logan and I both live there in that ward, and I've spent most of my time as a student here living there, and there's always people walking around, riding on bikes, walking their dogs, and so I think giving them just that peace of mind that they don't have to hug the road so tight or walk in someone's yard.
Sure.
I think that would, especially where in that part of the ward, there'd be so many more people out there, because there's already a lot of people moving around on foot all the time.
Interesting.
So the next thing that we've proposed is the implementation of stop signs. We found 26 intersections where stop signs could be put in, and
really,
yes, and it would be really beneficial. So again, we did a cost analysis based on 100 signs. It would cost, with labor and materials, it roughly cost $2,700 total. So with 26 stop signs in this ward, you're looking at about $675 with labor and materials. So here is so the main road going through that middle part is the loop. Just north of it, you have streets like Greenwood, Laurel, Mockingbird. In the south of it, you have that neighborhood where every street is called something Oak. So the northern part of that map is the neighborhood that I lived in, and I can't tell you how many times I've come around one of the corners and you're on the main drag and someone's whipping out right in front of you because there's no stop sign, so they don't have to stop for you. So, and there, like I said, there's always kids walking, there's people walking their dogs, and so just simply putting in these stop signs, it might take a while for people to get used to the sign being there, but just simply putting these signs in, I think would do a huge amount for public safety.
Never even thought about that.
Yeah, as you can see on the one down here, on the southern half, that entire backside of the neighborhood does not have any stop signs on the outlets. So again, people walking, other cars driving. Someone should yield to somebody, but it's kind of a game of chicken at that point. and then in our northeastern part of our ward, there's more stop signs. There weren't as many that were, needing stop signs. And I think a lot of that has to do with lower traffic in there as well.
I see that.
So I think that this part of the ward would need less attention as far as putting stop signs in. Like other people have mentioned, is speed bumps. The neighborhood that I live in, there's one street that has speed bumps on it. It has two. And so I think that putting speed bumps in could just make people slow down a little bit, especially in the, this is kind of a toss-up where you could do the stop signs or the speed bumps, depending on which is more, feasible at the time.
Sure.
And I think people would prefer the stop signs over the speed bumps.
Yeah, speed bumps are
Because
annoying.
everyone hates speed bumps. But if this is just a number we tossed out, if you put 50 speed bumps in throughout the ward, it's roughly going to cost about $10,000, which $675 looks a lot better than $10,000. I'm actually going to let William speak about the vegetation management because he had a good idea of some of the stuff that we saw.
The one thing that I did notice in the vegetation management, like he was saying, in the areas near Laurel and Mockingbird off of Old Lufkin, there's one lot in specific. They've cleared out a large amount of area to where if you're just idling 5 miles an hour through, you can see there's enough clearance to see any oncoming traffic. But if there was to be a stop sign, you'd have to pull just about into the road to be able to safely see it because of just this dense pocket of overgrowth, and there's a couple trees there right there. But if any of it was cleared out, then you'd actually be able to see safely through any of that. No, that's not me. My bad.
No, you're good. Oops. There we go. Compared to some of the other wards, I don't think we had as large of a streetlight problem. Now there were stretches where, especially on a lot of the longer roads, where it may have been dark because they spaced out the lights so much. So this is more of a case by case. It's not ward wide that you would have to focus on putting lights in. If you were to just take, one of the longer stretches, you can look down the road and see where you would need those lights. And I think one or two lights on every street that needs it would be a feasible solution if need be.
Sure.
So this is a buyout program that we've kind of suggested. This is modeled after the Harris County Flood Control District buyout program. Now I know that this isn't Harris County or Houston, and the money isn't there. Maybe this is designed. This is something that I've thought that the city and the county could do together, if it could happen. But so the way they've done their buyout program is based off of FEMA floodplains. You don't have to do it just because of a floodplain.
Yeah.
Like people have mentioned with the vacant lots, the abandoned houses, the houses are just sitting there doing absolutely nothing. You can give them an opportunity to volunteer their house for it, or the county or the city, whoever wants to take care of it, can actively seek them out and offer them fair market value, or if they're not using it, you could it just depends. But this chart shows how much money they were allotted and how many voluntary properties they had. And so if you were to just take properties maybe in more affluent areas and approach them to buy them out, you can turn them into green space. And that's what they've done down here. This was a house on Cypress Creek in northwest Harris County, and it was always flooding with the hurricanes. So they bought it out and then leveled the house, and now it's turned into green space, which is county owned and public.
What's interesting here that I'm not sure that everybody knows, and y'all may not know this either, but there's actually the city of Nacogdoches. There's actually that's part of our commission that we have. Angela, is it Sal? I believe that goes, and she one of her jobs is to go and look at houses that are in disrepair, that are they're dilapidated, that need to be torn down, and so she spends a lot of groundwork, a lot of time going to these houses, finding out who owns them, writes them letters, tries to get them to either tear them down or do that, and then there's a big expense with that the city incurs a lot of times, and they may or may not get that money back, and so that is, being able to. I don't know that part of trying to figure out how to incentivize somebody to want to do that, to want to sell their, even if it's a dilapidated house, to tear it down, to have a green space. And so that there's a little bit of a disconnect there, just trying to figure that part out.
Yes.
I think that's a great idea. But just, I think there's investors in town. It's just putting them together. That's the hardest thing, is just trying to figure out. I don't know, city or county may not have the capability, but having investors coming in and saying, look, I'll buy this property, for whatever it may, money-wise, whatever it may be, and tearing it down and then cleaning it up or rebuilding or whatever. And so that's the struggle that I see citywide that we see that comes before us. And so, anyway, that's just my 2 cents.
And I'm going to turn this over to Caitlin. She did all the cost analysis, and so I'm going to let her run through that one.
I'm here to talk about the thing we all care about the most, the money. I had the opportunity to partner with the city of Louisville, and they kind of gave me the information on times on installing stop signs, installing speed bumps, clearing vegetation. The city of Louisville is in North Texas, a little bit different than Nacogdoches, but they gave me some really good information. So our average house condition in the area was a 2.8. Our average yard condition was 1.6, street condition was a 1.3, and our average home value estimate, which was done through the CAD data and a statistical analysis, was around $83,000.
That's interesting.
Damon, of course, went through our stop signs and speed bumps, vegetation management around 3 weeks with, I'm going to find my thing, 20 workers working 7-hour days, 5 days a week for 3 weeks. To clear vegetation would cost the city around $23,100, which I found through the average cost that the city pays laborers. And also this adds walkability value, because if you clear more space, that offers a walk path. And as people continue to walk on that and create a sort of more walked down dirt path, that offers more space for bicyclists and walkers. And of course that increases your walkability score exponentially.
And safety.
And safety for everybody, because necessarily Nacogdoches just doesn't have the space or the money to go for sidewalks. So if you almost create a natural sidewalk, that's really common in urban and suburban areas, is creating that sort of natural sidewalk instead of just going straight for the concrete.
Yeah.
All right, and I think that is where we're at.
So if you have any questions for us, I want to give them an opportunity to come up and say anything that I missed or that they think that I need to.
He's saying that there's over 20 different intersections with stop signs that were not present, and most of the time it was in lower, like there weren't nearly as many cars coming through just the shorter roads in the residential areas. But one, for sure, that was the most important in my opinion, on Warren Road and South Street, like directly onto South Street. There was no stop sign onto South Street. But that was the only time that I observed, or that we observed anything, not onto like a major road.
Something that was super dangerous.
That was the one that we felt that was the most important to address.
That's interesting. I hadn't even thought or considered that either. So that's been eye-opening to me as well. So, cool.
I also forgot to mention, implementation of stop signs would increase walkability scores in the neighborhood by 1 point. Implementation of speed bumps and or reduced speed limits would bring up the walkability score by 3. Increased vegetation management to create sort of natural sidewalks would increase the walkability score by 6 points. And then any kind of buyout program like that can bring upwards of 10, 15 points. And so you'll see an average about a $20,000 increase in home values just based on the walkability score and the ability for people to be able to access places.
And what it probably does too is it probably opens the door for other grants and things too. Being able to do that, and that's something I think that the city's always looking for. At the end of the day, is money. Where the money comes from. How do we get the money? And so having grants and other things, and that's being able to do those walkability scores and other things like that. Obviously, are going to create a better community and hopefully more grants. Interesting. Okay. Any other questions? Thank y'all very much. Appreciate y'all.
So,
Good ideas.
Yeah. I happened to be in their class last week, and when we started this project, I was just expecting some basic information and recommendation, and it looks like they did a professional work.
No
So
doubt,
it's more than I thought, and if I've decided to do it with the city staff, will probably take a lot of time to do it, and so I really appreciate their input. I couldn't ask any question because every group is unique, and that makes the class very special because so many ideas coming from different angles, and that is what makes the class very, very unique.
Yeah, I think so, very much so. There was a lot of things I'm around the city every day, and I don't even thought about or seen, and so having a totally different perspective has been awesome to see. And there's a lot of things, again, safety is the first and foremost, and I see that in a lot of different ways that probably not being addressed, and so that's interesting.
Okay, I'll call Dr. McDonald to give us the closing remarks and.
I just wanted to mention, I have probably 3 students in here that need an internship opportunity this summer. And I know you mentioned a specific question or 2 that may have come out of this discussion. If you could couch that as a question, maybe looking at this evaluation change or other improvability, I'd be glad to convince them to take on these internships. There are 150 hours that they put towards a 3-hour credit. And so maybe they could answer more specific questions that you have raised out of this, that we could work with the city planner on that. And then I'll close. So would you please accept my invoice to give to Mr. Jeffers for this work?
We approved there. No.
You approved it? Good.
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think I should have mentioned this in the beginning. City manager is very much aware of this project. And all their recommendations, we are going to discuss that with all the various directors. There was discussion through engineering, parks, and different sections of different departments. So we will discuss this in the city hall, and just let you know, this is not just letting them do something and then we close it and throw it somewhere. It's something, most of them can be done even without a heavy budget. So we are looking into that, and I really appreciate their work once again. All right.
Well, thank y'all very much for that. It was very informative. I truly appreciate that work and effort that was put into it. You can tell there was a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of data that, will be greatly used, and that's the thing that's exciting, that the city could actually use some of that stuff, and the work is moving forward and was very beneficial. And so I thank you for your time and efforts on that. And I think with that, is there anything else anybody has? We'll close the meeting. We'll be adjourned at 6:26.